Dark clouds pressed low over the neighborhood, turning the sky a heavy shade of steel blue. What was once a peaceful suburban street had transformed into a river of muddy water, swallowing roads, lawns, and the first floors of homes. Rows of identical houses stood half drowned, their windows reflecting fear and disbelief. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance, warning people to evacuate, but many had already left, taking only what they could carry and hoping they would return someday. On the edge of the flooded street, a man stood quietly on a stone barrier, his hands buried deep in his pockets. His face was calm, but his eyes told a different story. He had been watching the water rise for hours, inch by inch, minute by minute. He had warned his neighbors the night before that the storm would be worse than expected. Most listened, some didn't. She was one of the ones who didn't. The woman stood just a few steps away from him, soaked from the rain, her hair clinging to her face, her jacket dark with water. Anger burned in her eyes hotter than the fear she refused to admit. She pointed her finger at the man, her voice sharp enough to cut through the roar of the flood. "This is your fault," she shouted. "You told everyone to leave, caused panic, and now look at this mess." The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't even move. He simply looked past her, toward the street that had become a river, toward the houses slowly disappearing under the dirty current. He knew arguing with water was pointless, and arguing with her felt the same. "You could have stopped this," she continued, stepping closer, jabbing the air between them. "You people always overreact. There was no need for all this." A sudden surge of water slammed against the barrier below them, splashing dangerously close to their feet. For a brief second, fear flickered across her face, but pride pushed it away just as quickly. She clenched her jaw, refusing to step back. The man finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Nature doesn't care who you yell at." Thunder rolled overhead, louder this time, as if the sky itself was responding. Around them, the neighborhood stood silent and broken, waiting to see who would finally understand the truth. The rain intensified, no longer falling in drops but in sheets, as if the sky had decided to empty everything at once. The muddy water surged higher, pushing against the stone barrier with relentless force. Somewhere nearby, a car alarm wailed before being abruptly silenced as the water swallowed it whole. The woman's breathing grew heavy. She glanced back at what used to be her street, now a moving, dangerous current. Her house was there, somewhere beneath the brown water, holding memories, furniture, and the sense of control she always believed she had. Losing it felt unreal, unacceptable. "This can't be happening," she muttered, her voice cracking for the first time. The man watched her carefully. He had seen this look before, not just during floods, but in people who believed rules bent for them, that someone else would always fix things. He stepped slightly to the side, giving her space between herself and the rising edge of the barrier. "They told us to evacuate early this morning," he said quietly. "Rescue boats won't come back once it gets too strong." She spun toward him again, anger flaring like a defense mechanism. "So what, you think I should just swim for it?" she snapped. Another wave slammed into the barrier, splashing over the top. Cold water soaked her shoes. She gasped and stumbled back, nearly losing her balance. The reality she had been shouting at was now touching her skin. The man reached out instinctively and grabbed her arm, steadying her. For a moment, neither spoke. The flood roared below them, loud and unforgiving. "This isn't about being right anymore," he said. "It's about getting out alive." Her fingers slowly lowered. The fight drained from her shoulders, replaced by something she hadn't felt in a long time, helplessness. She looked at his hand gripping her sleeve, then back at the water that had ignored every complaint she threw at it. In the distance, a rescue boat's engine hummed faintly, fighting against the current. Time was running out. She swallowed hard. "Where do we go?" she asked, barely audible. The man turned his head toward higher ground, where a small group of people waited, soaked but safe. The path there was narrow, and the water was rising fast. Behind them, the flood claimed another house. They moved quickly, step by careful step, along the narrow stretch of higher ground. The water chased them from behind like a living thing, swirling, grabbing at their legs, threatening to pull them off balance. Each step felt heavier than the last, not just because of the flood, but because of the weight of realization settling in the woman's mind. She stumbled once, her foot slipping on the wet stone. Her heart leapt into her throat. Instinctively, she grabbed the man's arm, gripping it tightly. He didn't pull away. He steadied her, anchoring himself against the force of the water. "Slow down," he said. Panic will make you fall. For the first time since the storm began, she listened. They reached a small rise where several neighbors stood huddled together, faces pale, clothes drenched, eyes fixed on the destruction below. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. The flood had erased arguments, status, and pride, leaving only survival. The woman turned back toward the submerged neighborhood. Only rooftops remained visible now, like gravestones marking a place that no longer existed. Her voice trembled. My house, everything was in there. The man nodded, his gaze steady. Things can be replaced. People can't. Those words hit her harder than the cold rain. She wrapped her arms around herself, finally allowing the truth to sink in. All her shouting, all her blame, it hadn't stopped the water. It hadn't saved a single thing. A rescue boat finally reached them, its engine growling against the current. A responder threw out a rope and shouted for them to grab on. One by one, the neighbors climbed aboard. When it was her turn, the woman hesitated. She looked at the man, her eyes no longer filled with anger, but with something closer to regret. I'm sorry, she said softly. For everything. He gave a small nod, not triumphant, not judgmental. Just human. As the boat pulled away, she watched the flood swallow the last visible street sign. The argument felt like a lifetime ago. In its place was a lesson written in water and loss, one she would never forget. Ahead, the boat moved toward safety. Behind them, the storm still raged. The rescue boat cut through the muddy water, carrying them away from what used to be home. Rain still fell, but softer now, as if the storm itself was finally growing tired. From the distance, the flooded neighborhood looked small, almost unreal, like a warning frozen in time. Wrapped in a thin emergency blanket, the woman sat silently. The noise, the shouting, the pointing fingers, all of it felt shameful now. She replayed the moment again and again, standing on the edge, yelling at a man who had tried to warn everyone, as if her anger could control the sky. It couldn't. She looked around the boat. Strangers held onto each other. No one asked who was right or wrong. No one demanded explanations. In disaster, titles disappear. Pride drowns faster than houses. The man stood near the edge of the boat, watching the water fade behind them. He didn't feel victorious. He felt tired. Nature had spoken in the only language it knew, force, and it hadn't cared who listened first. As the boat reached higher ground, the woman finally spoke again, her voice steady but changed. I thought if I complained loud enough, someone would fix it, she said. I thought there was always someone in charge. The man met her eyes. Sometimes, he replied, the lesson is knowing when to stop arguing, and start moving. She nodded slowly. That night, as the storm passed and silence returned, the truth settled in like calm after chaos. Moral of the story: you cannot argue with reality.